Please join me in Gassho as I read the words of Shinran Shonin from the preface to the Kyoyo Shinsho. If you should come to realize this practice and Shinjin, rejoice at the conditions from the distant past that have brought it about. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Hello, my name is Leo Joslin, and I am a minister's assistant here at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco. Welcome to our service for Sunday, January 31st. I've been asked to give the Dharma message, and thank you for that. So I really like the opening scripture that I just read, wherein Shinran tells us that we can rejoice that causes and conditions have come together in such a way that we can realize Shinjin. And Shinjin is actually something that I've been thinking about quite a lot lately. And one of the reasons for that was there was an article in the Wheel of Dharma in the November 2020 issue. And this article was entitled, What We Don't Talk About, and is referring to Shinjin. The author of the article is a young man named Taylor Kawate, and he writes about frustrations that when he wants to learn more about Shinjin, that it seemed to be an issue, a topic that's avoided. And let me read a line from that article. He states, I feel like Shinjin is a forbidden topic in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. It is only hinted at or indirectly alluded to. And he shared a story about how one of his peers started to talk about Shinjin at a youth retreat. And one of the youth leaders apparently cut it short and said something along the lines of, we don't usually talk about this. And so after reading the article, I realized that I was in agreement with Taylor. Yes, we do have an issue here. We don't talk about Shinjin enough. And Reverend Kobata wrote a response to the article. And so I would encourage everyone to read these two articles, the one written by Taylor in the November issue, 2020, A Wheel of Dharma, and the response by Reverend Kobata. I think both of them bring up some very important points, and I thank both of them for having contributed to this dialogue. And so I guess today's talk would be, if we were to give it a title, we could call it, Let's Talk About What We Don't Talk About. Let's talk about Shinjin. And also I'd like to share some thoughts on why we don't talk about Shinjin, why this has been so. So anyway, let's start by defining Shinjin. And I think one way to do it is to consider the Chinese characters that it's based on. So the top character means to entrust or believe, and the bottom character is a character for heart or mind. So the entrusting heart, the entrusting mind, I like those definitions. And in our guidebook, the Jodo Shinshu, a guide, on page 82, it gives a very simple definition for Shinjin. It says, the heart that entrusts in Amida Buddha. So I like that. It's nice and simple. On page 79, there's an expansion of the definition. It's established, Amida's aspiration or vow to liberate exists first. And our experiencing of that calling voice is what Shinjin is. So we're experiencing the calling voice of Amida. It's not initiated by us, but by Amida. Shinjin is a gift from Amida. On page 83, there's another reference to Shinjin. When we receive Shinjin, our work, our family, and our social life, just as they are, as well as reciting the name, become expressions of gratitude. This is how the life of the Nembutsu follower truly manifests itself to its fullest potential. So when I'm asked what Shinjin is, I'll refer to these definitions, and I'll also use some of the translations for Shinjin, such as faith and realization. Shinjin is the realization that our rebirth in the Pure Land will take place thanks to the workings of the primal vow, thanks to Amida, thanks to the path of the Nembutsu. So for me, these simple definitions serve as home base for an understanding of Shinjin. But as human beings, we want to know more. There's a lot written about Shinjin, but I find that the more I try to understand or analyze, the more complicated I make it for myself. For example, early on, I started focusing on feelings, and I wanted to know what Shinjin felt like. And I ran into frustrations, just like Taylor, when I would ask, what does Shinjin feel like? And I couldn't get any answers. And I'd like to share a story that happened with me. I was in class at the Institute for Buddhist Studies, IBS, and I think the topic of the class, the topic that we were discussing must have been Shinjin, because I raised my hand and I made a comment. I said, if you ask 10 different Jodo Shinshu ministers what Shinjin is or what it feels like, you'll get 10 different answers. And as soon as I said that, I thought to myself, uh-oh, I'm in trouble now. You know that feeling if you say something that you didn't think through very well and you immediately regret it, like, why did those words come out of my mouth? That's kind of like what I was thinking. So I think I was coming across as maybe a little sarcastic. But the professor was very compassionate. And he gave me an answer that I found very meaningful. He said, think of a mother holding an infant child and how the mother and child feel a love between each other. The child knows that the mother loves the child, and the mother knows that the child is dependent on her and that there's this love between them. So I really liked that answer. It resonated with me. And it reminded me of something that I had read in this book, The Heart of the Shin Buddhist Path by Takamaro Shigaraki. Dr. Takamaro Shigaraki. And he wrote, when a child calls out mom to its mother, at a deeper level, the mother is calling out to her child. The mother's heart echoes or reverberates within her child's heart, and therefore the child calls out mom. This activity takes place in both directions. The child's calling out mom to the parent intersects with the parent's love for the child. As we continue to call out the name of the Buddha, Namo Amida Butsu, ourselves become emptied, and we experience deeply the truth of something long forgotten, that our saying of the name in which we call out to the Buddha is itself the Buddha's calling out to us. When this occurs, it is called the experience of awakening. This is Shinjin, which comes to be realized through saying the Nembutsu. Anyway, I really love this passage, and I think it's beautiful how it brings together Shinjin, the Nembutsu, and compassion, all within a single metaphor of the mother and child. And it reminds us that Shinjin is a gift from Amida. It also reminds us that the ego is dropped. And so those feelings of safety, of being loved, of being grasped, never to be let go, and especially feelings of joy and gratitude. I thought to myself, this must be what Shinjin feels like. But again, the more we talk about it, the more we can complicate it. Our intellectualization can get in the way. In Reverend Kobata's response to Taylor's article, he reminds us that Shinjin is a finger pointing at the moon, not something to pursue as a badge of honor for attaining some sort of spiritual achievement. And to that, may I add, it's not a feeling to pursue. Shinjin is simply means the realization that we will be reborn in the Pure Land, thanks to the working of the primal vow. So it's a word. It's a word that we as human beings use to represent the great truth of our tradition. It's a word like sushi or taiko. The word sushi can't capture the experience of sushi, the range of flavors, the creative artistry in making sushi, and taiko cannot capture the passion of the drums, the energy. They're simply words that point toward them. And in the same sense, Shinjin is a Japanese word that points toward the truths of the primal vow, of the Nembutsu, and of the great compassion that pervades the universe. And so to wrap this up, I'd like to share a passage that I believe may explain why we don't talk a lot about Shinjin. And this is found in this book called Awaken to Your True Self. I know I must seem like a book salesman or something, but I just wanted to share these resources. This book is written by Dr. Hideo Yonezawa, and it's translated by our bishop, Reverend Marvin Harada. And in this book, he writes, I have said that there is a relation between the eternal and the now, and there is a relation between the limited and the infinite. The relation between these is religion. Shinjin is an expression of the realization that your life, which is limited and finite, has a place within the infinite. So each of us is an intersection of the eternal and the now. And we're also an intersection of the finite and the infinite. And religion seeks to explain this. And we do so in words. But how can we explain the eternal in words? How can we explain the infinite in ways that are easily understood? I don't think we can. We only have words that are like fingers pointing to the moon. And that is how we can look at Shinjin. And maybe this is why we haven't been talking a lot about Shinjin, in recognition that what we're talking about is something that cannot be put into words. And so I don't think this is something we should stress over. Shinjin happens at its own pace when causes and conditions are just so. I think it's important to remember the words that Shinran quoted in the Kyogyo Shinsho. He quoted from the Nirvana Sutra, writing, all sentient beings will, without fail, ultimately realize great Shinjin. Therefore it is taught, all sentient beings are possessed of Buddha nature. Great love and great compassion are Buddha nature. Buddha nature is Tathagata. So these are just some of my thoughts about Shinjin and the idea that we're not talking a lot about it. I'm not trying to conclusively explain it, or I'm just sharing some thoughts of how Shinjin makes sense to me in this present moment, and only because causes and conditions have come together in a certain way. The main message is that I hope we will talk more about Shinjin, especially the truths associated with it, including the truths of oneness, the Nembutsu, and Amida's primal vow, which is always working for us. So please join me in Gassho as I read the words of Dr. Taitetsu Uno from the afterword of his translation of the Tanisho. The purpose of human life is accomplished when we experience true entrusting, whereby a limited, foolish being realizes its unity with unlimited other power. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Thank you so much for listening. Please stay well and stay safe.